Hey guys, we are here, Chip Salt Show, New Mexico. It has been a crazy weekend. We had a shooting over the weekend. But before we get into that, we also have Jodi Kinkaid here. I've met this gentleman, this awesome human being a few years ago from CCIA.
Yeah.
You were very active, you're still very active, and you're into the interesting stuff. You're into the maritime law, the stuff that, corporate America is a big subject in the conservative circle, but it's actually very intricate, very complicated, but very meaningful and very powerful. With this kind of knowledge, I mean, it can change human consciousness worldwide, because it really does break down to words and honor and just commitment to God and country via the English language. That's the best way I can say. It's very important stuff.
I can tell you a lot more about that.
Of course,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, that's the whole point. This stuff is to me, it's the most important rabbit hole of our time right now, because now that we've gotten a lot of momentum with the country and the world, this is the stuff that's really going to usher in the future. So before we get into that, Alice, I'm sure you have some words about what happened this weekend.
You know, right before we started recording the show, we have to talk about our local shooting that happened here at Young Park. Unfortunately, it made national news. I mean, all day on Saturday, because it happened Friday night, about 9 or 10 at night, I believe. And so I was getting calls from my Arizona friends, texts, family, and everything. Hey, what's going on over there in Little Las Cruces, right? And as far as I know, I believe 3 people died, right? And there were 11 injured, I think,
Wow.
something like that. And in fact, it's not too far away from where we actually record the show. We're not going to tell you exactly where we are, but
It's definitely in the area.
it's in the area. It's in the area, kind of too close for comfort. And what I want to say is, you might be watching from another state, another town, and thank you very much, Chipsters, for doing that. But it seems like our little problems, they're not uncommon to the whole United States. But we want to start out with that because it's a big deal. Our community is heartbroken right now. I'm just going to throw out a couple of questions and you guys jump in too, but evidently there were 200 people at the park. This park, when I was growing up here in the 70s, I remember when it was brand new. They were building the park. It's beautiful. It's a big, beautiful park with a pond, lake, whatever. It's a pond. It's almost like a little lake. And it's known kind of for being a rough area. You can agree with me on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's been reminiscing about how Las Cruces used to be. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago when you can cruise on El Paseo, when you can go to Young Park on the weekend. But I stopped going to Young Park with my daughter years ago. It's just they were finding condoms on the floor, needles all the time, so we just stopped going. But yeah, I mean, look, this is a very common thing. This is Democrat policies. They destroyed the economy. They destroyed our education. Most of those kids probably can't even read or basic math. How do we expect them to have basic logical skills? So they've done so many things to destroy our society that it's finally catching up to us.
And you can't put aside the role of the government in this either, because what they have done, particularly in the Obama years, is set people against people. It's class warfare, identity politics.
Well, yeah.
And that's the Democrat way of breaking down the unity of the American populace. When we used to get along and understand, I mean, back in the 60s, I was born in 1950. And I remember the civil rights movement of the 60s and Martin Luther King and what he was doing. And he was bringing people together. And our government no longer tries to do that. In fact, they stopped him from doing that as well. But that's another subject besides our shooting. But when people aren't taught to get along, then they get all worked up over little macho insults, and this happens.
And there's very young people involved. Unfortunately, there was a 16-year-old died, I think, a 19-year-old, and I believe a 20-year-old. What I'm used to in this little community when I was growing up are a lot of family events.
Mm-hmm.
Things at the park, car shows, and things like that. So here's the good thing that I think about this, okay? It's a horrible tragedy. It's a horrible tragedy, and my heart goes out to people who are suffering. They're still flying people to the El Paso facilities to take care of some of the victims that got shot. But this has to wake up some people who are kind of in denial about things that we're going to talk about today. We don't have enough cops to go around. Our chief Story made a comment about that, and he did a pretty good job. He didn't get too political, and he told us on purpose he wasn't going to get political about it. But we don't have enough cops out there to cover things. If there are 200 people at this park in this bad area, usually I would think they're probably cruising around somewhere, and it's at nighttime.
They
Just
didn't have enough
oversight.
officers.
But that's our big problem here.
Yeah.
So we have elections that Zeke and I have been talking about. We've got 3 city councils seats coming up. So if we don't change things, I mean, this is not going to be the last of events like this to happen. It's horrible.
Yeah, and I was throwing the Democrats under the bus earlier. I mean, because it is a political thing. I mean, you were saying Obama was very divisive, and people argue that he was the most divisive president of all time. I mean, things seem to have gotten worse after the civil rights movement too. I heard that perspective recently too. Like, they were showing videos in the 1950s of black families, super traditional. They were educated just as much as the whites. They were just as smart. And it seems like after the civil rights movement, that all went away.
When the left tried to fix things.
The Johnson years broke down. They paid the black families to split up, basically. With the welfare.
Promoting non-family.
Yeah.
So I mean, I say that because this city has just been destroyed. We used to be one of the safest cities in the country here in Las Cruces, and that's when
And it wasn't that long ago.
It doesn't feel like it, but it actually kind of was. I mean, this is like early 2000s. Mid 2000s, late 2000s. I think that's when, basically, the Obama reign is when things started to get real bad. And I noticed around here, the crime and everything got really bad once the lockdowns hit. Once Biden got in, the lockdowns hit. I mean, we started to get violent crime like crazy. Like, it's normalized. Now we're basically Albuquerque now. So I mean, yeah, I say the Democrats because it's a simple solution. We used to have the most high when we were the safest city in the country. Our officers were paid very well for Las Cruces. So now they have cut the hell out of their pay. Nobody wants to work here. And plus you might end up going to jail for just doing your job. So you can go get another job getting paid probably more for way less liability. I mean, the guys here are dumb. They're not going to go here. Or if they want to be a cop, they're going to go to Phoenix. They're going to become a state. Because if you become a state trooper, you go work for MLG basically, she pays the hell out of you. So these are simple solutions. And the city council has incrementally destroyed our police force. They can't say defund the police because they didn't necessarily take too much from their budget. So they're real crafty about it. But what they did do is they cut their pay.
Yeah.
And there wasn't that long ago, I remember seeing a big billboard off the highway, and they're recruiting. Phoenix was recruiting officers for here. And like you say, so if you're going to go, you have the opportunity to do that. I don't know what police officers get paid. I don't know if you guys.
I'm not going to put an exact number. I just know it's less than what they were getting paid.
And, hopefully they have good benefits. But it's such a risk, and you have tragedies like this that happen. It's horrible.
These guys should be getting paid just the same as Albuquerque. They're dealing with just as crazy stuff as Albuquerque is now.
And we're closer to the border here.
And we're closer to the border.
It has to be taken into consideration.
I mean, there's been radical crime. Like as soon as the border opened up, there was that it was an illegal immigrant, right? They were running away from the cops. And it was like a assault rifle shootout. I think we lost a state trooper in that one. And that was here in Las Cruces, and then. Here we have this incident when she wasn't an illegal immigrant, but he was a young kid. And then it's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse until we get some Republicans in office here. I mean, it's just basic common sense stuff to fix these solutions. They don't even want to act like it's even a problem.
I want to take an opportunity, and not that this would have stopped this horrible thing that happened, but when you probably remember, Jodi, we had Officer Velasco came to speak at our CCIA meeting. That's a Coalition of Conservatives in Action. And one thing when I was a kid, and I probably talk about this too much in the shows, but when I was growing up here, there was a curfew for young people. If you're a minor, there were curfews for us. And I asked him about that. I said, do we have, because I was relatively new coming back here. And he said, no, there isn't a curfew, and it's really difficult for them. And he said it would help them do their job, because right now they really can't do very much unless that person, that minor, is in danger. Mm-hmm. And I think that to me, it's one simple little thing that maybe a city council could do that. They could institute a curfew. There's one in Alamogordo. There's a whole lot of other stuff. In fact, I just saw somebody posted something about, how we have the referendum signatures for the zoning. And somebody said, how do we get a petition started to get, more police officers and things that have to be done? And maybe that's what we as a people need to start doing. I know CCI is very good about going down there. You too, Jodi. Yeah. You've gone to the county and spoken too.
Yeah. But, the city council is deaf.
Deaf,
to put it politely.
Yeah, it's polite.
I mean, they They are progressive, and they're proud of it. They have said that, and the progressive movement by nature thinks they know better than anybody else how society should be run. So they just tell people what to do. They don't pay any attention to the people that come in. I mean, again, look at that zoning ordinance. There were 2 hours of testimony from the Realtors Association, from individuals, from CCIA, all speaking against the zoning changes. And when they closed down the public input, they voted to approve it without even a debate.
Right. There's only one, only Matisse is the only one
Yeah.
that opposed it.
Yeah.
And there was great suggestions, just let's table this, let's fix some of these things, let's tweak them, and then come back. No.
No, and I personally, wrote several times to Ms. Flores, who is my representative on the council, and I said, please, put this on a referendum. Let the people vote for it. That's what government is supposed to be about. And I didn't even get so much of a hiccup in response.
She didn't even respond to you.
Oh, heavens no.
And they're so arrogant and they're so brazen, and it's kind of Alex Jones was talking about today, but the Democrats haven't really won an election. He was even speaking specifically to Austin since Lyndon B. Johnson days. They've been stealing elections there for 30, 40 years. And he was well known for stealing elections even for his congressional race. Or was it LBJ or was it Jimmy Carter? It was one of those guys.
Come
I've
on,
heard-
Zeke.
I've heard of
What was 40 years ago? That was Carter.
LBJ is, I've heard LBJ is,
He was the cheater guy?
there's a lot of stuff that coming out about him. That guy was something else.
That's about 40
Well,
years,
but
right?
look here, even in New Mexico. I mean, you look at Jay Block and some of the people that ran in the last election, all of them across the board, about 3 or 4 got 12% of the vote straight across. How did that come out that all of them got the same amount, but it wasn't enough to do anything?
We've talked about that. We talked at all the state races, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, cooking the books is a way of life for the Democrat Party.
Yeah, it's a way, and that's what I'm saying. They're so brazen. They know they shouldn't even be up there, and they're just so confident that they're just going to keep running them up. But the Democrat Party, even Bill Maher was saying that. Bill freaking Maher was saying the Democrat Party is done. He's trying to sell his crowd on Trump now, and all these top leaders, the Democrat Party are saying their party's dead. So, and they're getting arrested. We're about to indict Judge Joel Cano. I've been talking about that. He's facing terrorism charges. That's serious stuff. Terrorism charges, big
Do
deal.
you have any update on that, Zeke?
Other than that he resigned on Friday. He officially resigned on Friday. There was a mass email sent out to all the judges because now they got to go back and they have to rehear a lot of his cases because of the corruption. Now that case, that's kind of law. They got to go back and give whoever he sentenced a chance to get in front of another judge. And then basically he's in a lot of trouble. He was forced into resigning until this indictment goes through. And that's the thing, is like with this shooting, they're going to try to use it. They've already said, MLG's already said, well, we're going to go and do a special session, so they're going to try and grab some guns because of their policies that screwed up our city, that screwed up our kids, that screwed up our police department. They're going to take our guns from us. And they put in legislation to give guns to immigrants.
I mean, just yesterday, Chuck Schumer was on TV bragging about how the Democrat Party had placed, I forget how many progressive judges in the last year of the Biden regime
I heard that.
into public office, and they would be the ones basically legislating against common sense in the government.
That's right.
Protecting the people from common sense and good government practices.
Right. And the Democratic Party is in such disarray. They're even like there's an element of them, Chuck Schumer, like using his name. They want to get rid of him.
Yeah.
It is in such disarray.
Because he's not doing what Soros wants him to do. They just had, what was that, Bernie Sanders AOC event. They said it was 30,000 people, right? No, well, they did geo-tracking, basically like the geofencing. They were able to determine that it's 20,000 of the same people that are traveling with them across the country. These are fake rent-a-crowds. Provable. Provable by cell phones.
There's something like 84% of them have been at more than 3 or 4.
They don't change disguises or something?
Well, it was,
they just put their card in, get their pay, go demonstrate against something.
What was Indivisible? They were just here in Las Vegas. That's the same organization. So I was on the news about a month or so ago, and it was Bill McCamley was representing Indivisible, and I say his name specifically because that guy's, I don't like that guy. Doesn't surprise me at all. He's affiliated with this Indivisible group. That's actually the ones, they're going to jail for 5 to 20 years. They're going to jail for 5 to 20 years right now for all the damn terrorist attacks they're doing on Teslas. And that's who we have. And they get on the news in Las Cruces, right? They don't want to talk to people like us, but they want to talk to Indivisible, people who are probably rent-a-crowd, just like we've been seeing, and they come and protest our Tesla station over here. It's just crazy how much power they have, but even with all the billions of dollars that they stole, they are still they're done. These guys are done.
Yeah.
It's over.
It's about time.
It's about time.
Time for a change.
That's right.
Well, I ran a veterinary clinic, as you know, for many,
Yeah,
many
please give us
years.
your intro. Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna move on from the shooting. We'll maybe go back and do it throughout the podcast, but I really want to introduce you guys to Mr. Jodi Kinkaid. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, in business, one of my, golden rules was you're rewarded by getting what you pay for. And, if you let people go and have no accountability for action, no bail, just the, catch and release type stuff, if you reward that, that's what you're going to get, is a society that has nothing but criminals. Whereas if you reward consequences and settle people down and have some appropriate correction activity for antisocial behavior, then the society will be safer and people will learn to get along a little better. But, it's going to take a whole change in the way our society evolves. I mean, personally, we're here to talk about government today.
Yeah, well, real quick, can you break down your veterinarian experience?
Well, in 25 words or less, I was a bipolar veterinarian. No, I started out, it's traditional veterinary medicine, going to Anthony when I got out. I came out here when I got out of vet school and went to White Sands Missile Range for 3 years, which was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I love New Mexico so much that I bought a clinic in Anthony and settled down. Was doing a lot of mixed practice, horse work, that sort of stuff. But one of the problems I had was when I was 28, they told me to get both of my hips replaced.
28 years old?
Yeah, I was a defensive tackle at a small college, and I kind of did my body in when I was a youngster. And so after I got after I got in the Army, I started breaking down physically, and I started getting acupuncture. And I said, this is pretty cool. I bet I could do this on animals. And I started learning acupuncture, and I became a holistic veterinarian. And then I had people coming to me wanting me to treat them because I'd been doing fine for their dogs.
Well, mammals are mammals, man.
And then I went back and got my degree as a naturopathic doctor, so that I was indeed bipolar. I treated animals and people. And
also, you're a naturopath for humans and as well.
Yeah. And, and then, of course, I got in trouble with the state of Texas. My clinic was in Texas. 20 yards on the other side of the state line in Anthony. And, the state board called me down. They said, Dr. Kinkaid, you're treating people. And I said, yeah, I've got another degree. And they said, but the law says veterinarians can't treat people. And I said, but I've got another degree. And they said, we don't care whether you have another degree or not. The law says you can't treat people. But, so we ended up cutting a deal. And I had to see my humans in New Mexico. So I rented office space on the New Mexico side of town.
Wow.
And I would see animals 4.5 days a week and humans 1 day a week.
Just to clarify, because some of you that watch may not understand, Anthony is literally a little town, and the state line goes through it.
So
that's why he says
right
Anthony,
down
Texas,
through
and
the center
Anthony,
of
New
town.
Mexico.
Yeah. And so anyway, that was my professional background.
Super
but,
cool, man.
I've always been kind of an oddball. And I started getting in. Somebody gave me a book called None Dare Call It Treason by Gary Allen many, many moons ago. And I read that, and it started talking about the condition of our government and how it was betraying the American people. And that led from one thing to another. And here I am today, still an oddball, still fighting for a better form of government, shall we say.
So now we'll have to have him back another time just to talk about all of that.
Yeah, no, it's very intriguing. Very intriguing. But today, you wanted to get into maritime law, the Corporation of America, and I'm sure, there's a lot of people out there who don't know or have heard about this stuff because it's pretty unique. So if you kind of give them the elevator pitch, but
I'm here.
Army proof it.
Yeah, I'm here as a representative for the re-inhabited Republic of America. That's called the Republic for the United States of America. What most people do not realize is that our government is a corporation, just like AT&T or IBM. And just like a corporation, the individual that owns stock in it doesn't have much say in the way it's run. People complain today constantly about the fact that our government doesn't pay attention to the will of the people, or actually for the good of the people. We're learning now with Doge about how the government's been lining its own pockets and doing whatever it wants to without accountability, because the people have no say in the government. What actually happened was we had a republic form of government. Remember, Benjamin Franklin was asked by a woman when he came out of the Constitutional Convention, "Sir, what form of government have you given us?" And he said, "A republic, dear, if you can keep it." And George Washington, in his farewell address when he left the presidency, warned about unscrupulous men trying to take over the government and corrupt the form of the government that we were given in the Constitution. And that has been happening all through the early portion of this country.
Since then, yeah, since its foundation.
I mean, Andrew Jackson, the bankers were trying to establish a central bank to control our money supply. They tried to assassinate Andrew Jackson. William Henry Harrison and Zachary Taylor were assassinated by the Jesuits because they were actually supporting the South. In the years prior to the Civil War, Europe wanted the American experiment to fail because they saw us as a threat. They didn't want us to be a world power, and the Catholic Church in particular did not want us to be a Protestant nation that rose to prominence in the world scene. And so it's well documented, if you look in the right history books, how the European forces tried to undermine the American government. And basically, that led us up to the Civil War. At the time of the Civil War, when the South walked out, half of Congress left. And Congress no longer had a quorum, so it basically could not legitimately conduct any business. What Abraham Lincoln did was to establish a form of executive government. It was a form of military government that he called executive ordinance government. And he ran the country that way, leaving the seats in Congress open for the South to, quote, repent of their sins of secession and come back, because he believed that secession was not allowed under the Constitution, which technically it is not. And therefore, if the miscreants in the South that led the states astray would basically turn themselves in, and the states would come back and say, we want to be states again, Lincoln was going to let them in. And many people at that time did not want that to happen. They wanted the South to be punished, and they wanted the debt of America that they ran up paying for the Civil War to be basically an albatross around our neck as we went forward. And so short term, through the Reconstruction period, they assassinated Lincoln. They kept the military form of government in place, and in 1871, the government of the United States was incorporated according to the directions of the Bank of England, so that we could pay the debt out over the next 40 years instead of being foreclosed upon. But with that incorporation, it gave the Bank of England control over the government of the United States, basically, because the incorporation is done through a company in Delaware, which has its roots in England. And for that reason, we have been a corporation ever since 1871. And that has led to the enablement of the Federal Reserve Bank, which took away the power of our government to make its own money and gave it to a private corporation. It allowed the government itself to basically operate and do what it wanted to by making statutes rather than common law. In common law, before the Civil War, the people had a say in what was going on. You had county grand juries, where if something was going on that wasn't right, they could come together and the will of the people could vote in an ordinance or something and pass it up to their state government and pass it up to the federal government. That was the way America was organized during the Revolution. Started at counties, went to state, went to the federal government. That's the way
Most local levels.
our government was built, on a foundation of we the people. And that's the way it was meant to be. Under the corporation, the central government has all the power, and very little is transferred down to the people. I mean, we just were talking about it earlier in the show. You go to the city council, they have no authority except what we give them, and yet they don't listen to us, and we have actually no power to do much against them unless to vote them out of office. But they control the system, they control the voting machines. What are you going to do?
Well, you get shootings at the neighborhood park is what you do.
Shootings at the neighborhood park. To get back to the Republic, though, what was very interesting, a lot of people have seen the video clip of George H.W. Bush, the elder Bush, when he was president, talking about how we are moving into a new one world order. And
When was this?
this was in 1991, I believe. And it was at a speech he gave to the UN.
Oh yes.
Talking
He saw the New World Order. That's like a real
us being
famous.
the New World Order,
Yeah.
going into a New World Order.
Yeah.
And so at that time, unbeknownst to the most of the American people, Bush signed a treaty with the UN, which, because the federal government was bankrupt back in the 90s. We've been technically bankrupt ever since the 30s, but that's another discussion.
Right, other show.
Yeah, that's a whole show, or it's a series of shows on that. But realistically speaking, because our government was bankrupt, the UN demanded a treaty from Bush that basically said if the government was unable to control its citizens, in other words, if we had bad civil outbreaks like we did in the 60s, for example, then the UN would have the authority to come in and take over running the country. It's called suzerainty, I believe is the proper word for it, where another nation or another power controls a country.
Yeah.
They could come in and take over. And that was going to go into effect April of 2011, no, April of 2010, excuse me. Well, it just so happened that there was a group they call the White Hats in the military that ever since John F. Kennedy was assassinated in the 60s had been studying the problem of how to return our government away from a corporate-dominated entity to something that was more of a constitutional republic run by we the people. And it even happened so dramatically that after Bush signed that treaty, the military had a plan for trying to get some power back into the people from the government. They went to the Clinton administration, and 300 of them were killed and eliminated by the Clinton machine. Of course, they call her Hillary for a reason. But allegedly, yeah. I mean, but you know, she hands out suicide notes, right? You know. But anyway, that's another story too.
Anthony Bourdain. I was a huge fan of Anthony Bourdain, man.
Well, I mean, even that federal prosecutor that just showed up dead in Alexandria or Fairfax,
That's
Virginia.
right.
It was just a lot of Democrats have been showing up dead lately.
People disappear if they know things about the wrong people, but that's neither here nor there.
We've got some of that here locally too.
Because, well, going back to get on the subject of the re-inhabited republic, the military, after they failed to have any impact on the government itself, went to a constitutional instructor. I call him an instructor because he wasn't a lawyer, meaning bar attorney. But, you know, there have been movements for many, many years by people who teach others how to work around the corporation. They teach people how to get around paying income tax legally, stuff like that. And again, that is fighting the corporation on its own terms. It's kind of like playing against the house in a casino. The house is going to always win.
Just real quick, didn't the John Birch Society, weren't they some of the proponents of that and say you really don't have to pay income tax? Or am I remembering that wrong?
Technically, and it wasn't just the John Birchers. I mean,
just
the income tax is a voluntary. There was a wonderful movie called From Freedom to Fascism that was put together by the Hollywood producer Aaron Russo. He was a well-known producer. He did that one movie that most people know is Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. But he kept hearing all this stuff about the fact that income tax didn't have to be paid or it was illegal, so he decided to do a documentary about it. And what he discovered was that we don't have to pay income tax. But because we are subjects of a corporation, we are caught in all these adhesion contracts. If you have ever paid income tax, you have signed a document called a 1040 that says, I will pay the tax voluntarily. And even though he had it interviewing a former head of the IRS.
Don't be saying about taxes. Alice loves paying her taxes.
Well,
right?
I mean, but no, I mean, in the movie, he interviewed a former head of the IRS who said, yes, it is voluntary, but everybody's got to do it or we'll get them.
Trump's trying to get rid of the taxes right now.
Yeah.
And everybody's laughing at
Yeah,
it.
but you know, well, we don't need the income tax.
No.
It should be a flat tax, but that's again another
That's
subject.
It's another subject.
But to make a long story short, Turner was a constitutional expert, and he had a radio show in the southeast U.S. It came out of Alabama, but he had over 1 million followers on how to fight the corporation, you know, legally, how to get yourself out of these adhesion contracts and that. And so the white hats in the military went to Turner, and they said, can you figure out a way to basically put a legitimate government in power in the United States, because the military did not want to implement a coup. That would have been an illegal usurpation of power, and the white hats were not going to do that. They needed some sort of a legitimate force to stand behind that would be a legal government. Well, Turner thought about it, he prayed about it, and he came up with the idea when he studied the history that the government had basically, it wasn't just unoccupied during the Civil War, it had been unoccupied ever since the Civil War. And there was a Supreme Court justice, and we were talking before the show, I couldn't find the book where the quote was and get the guy's name. But a Supreme Court justice back in 1903, when he was asked about the corporate governance of America, said, yes, America has two parallel governments. A de facto government, meaning one that's actually pulling the strings, that is a corporation, and it has an unoccupied government running parallel, which is the unoccupied Congress, which was vacant at that point in time. So what Turner figured out was that if we just went back and re-inhabited the Congress that had been left vacant for the last 100 and some years, we would have a legitimate government. And so to make a long story short, in 2010, they actually had a convention of states in Utah, and they elected congressional representatives, senators, you know, House of Representatives and all that from each state. They had 49 of the 50 states represented at this, and they reseated the government in time to get out of that treaty with the UN, because the military declared as soon as they had 26 states, which was a majority, seated, the military declared that a constitutional government was now in place running parallel to the corporation. Therefore, the corporation was not in danger and the United States could not be taken over by the UN. That was their first objective. The next
Okay, we gotta.
So everybody's getting your mind blown.
Yeah. Let's get the upshot going here, man. I know it's very intricate, but so the UN, what happened with the UN?
The UN just went away. I mean, they were sitting there with this treaty in hand, and once the conditions of the treaty were basically met, the treaty was dissolved, and we didn't have to worry about that. Then the problem became one of getting the corporate government de-emphasized in power, let's say, and it's going to be hard to dissolve the corporation completely because there are certain corporate functions in business and international trade.
Do we get to dissolve our debt?
We do get to dissolve our debt.
Yeah.
There was a Supreme Court case just recently.
It wasn't us running the country anyway. It wasn't us running the country anyway.
Well, but no, there was a man who sued the bank because he quit paying on his mortgage when he owed like $10,000 or $18,000.
I've heard this, I think.
And, you know, the bank was going to foreclose on a house that was worth between $100,000 and $200,000. And he said that's not legal because the bank never gave me anything of value. All they gave me was promissory notes, pieces of paper, which we call dollars. And so since the bank could not demonstrate they gave him anything of value in exchange for that mortgage, the Supreme Court and Justice Alito said that under the Constitution, mortgages as they are enforced today are probably unconstitutional.
Well, and that's the thing too, guys, is the dollar's got to go away. We got to de-dollarize a little bit. We got to weaken the dollar and then start segueing to gold. But the dollar is very vulnerable and it's structured to collapse.
But what Trump is doing with that sovereign wealth fund that he's putting in,
Right.
he's moving us back to an asset-backed currency.
Yeah, gold.
Gold
Well,
standard.
gold and what we have in the ground and everything. Do you know? Do you know what the collateral from the national debt is right now?
Well, I have no idea.
Your birth certificate, my birth certificate.
I've heard this before
Her
too.
birth
Oh,
certificate.
yeah.
You know, that's when the banks, when we
Wow.
went bankrupt in the Great Depression in 1933, FDR implemented the policy of issuing birth certificates numbered by the state for every child, every live birth. And your productivity over your life is the collateral that the United States has been using for the national debt.
Literally sold us out.
And literally sold us out. And there is a bond based on your
Yeah.
productivity.
I've heard about this too.
And, you know, I don't know what it'd be worth for any of us, but basically the government is using money made on the backs of our labor without our even knowing about it as collateral for the national
And this is how they
debt.
rationalize
And
printing of money.
they give us paper that means nothing.
Right. Yeah. They rationalize printing of money with this and all our social security benefits, all
that
kinds of
sort
stuff
of
that's tied to it, right?
Well, you know, and we're getting away from the Republic though, because I don't know how our time's running right now.
We probably got about 20 minutes left.
But,
Yeah.
you know, realistically speaking, once we had the Republic stood up again, and there was a parallel government that was in
This
accordance
is
with
2010? This is 2010?
this is 2010,
Okay.
with our original principles,
Uh-huh.
the military decided that that was going to be the best way to get the country back online.
Okay.
Only problem was the re-inhabited republic at that point was gaining a lot of steam. They had over 20 million people that had signed up to be voters.
The corporate government.
No, the re-inhabited.
The re-inhabited, okay.
The original republic,
Okay.
the free state government.
Okay.
You know, and what they were doing was building impetus, getting some momentum going for competing with the corporate government to take power.
What inspired them to get that going in 2010? I mean, because for me, I got involved with politics and government because I got screwed by the government in more ways than one. And so it seemed like life was a little bit, but we went through a market crash about that time. So I mean, what was the White Hat's inspiration for this? Was the JFK assassination?
Yeah.
But and you know, in their defense, things did start to crumble pretty rapidly as soon as he was killed.
Yeah.
The CIA and the FBI was willy-nilly.
CIA and Mossad, they were involved in that.
That's right.
And they basically covered that up. They covered up the assassination of Martin Luther King.
It just fascinates me that they were, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm fascinated by the fact that even since JFK's assassination, that there have been people fighting for this country in such a positive way, and it took them all the way till 2010, all behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're reaping the benefits of their fight today. I'm sure Trump had something
we're
to do
still
with it.
fighting behind the scenes because the force behind this effort to get our government back on track is the White Hats and the military.
Right.
And they cannot do it by themselves, as I said, without it being a coup.
But are they spiritually motivated? Are they Christians? Are they? I mean,
Well, that's a big part of the movement too.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know whether to introduce this, but I mean, I've been
no,
saying
throw it out there.
our country is spiritually bankrupt.
Of course.
And we have gotten so far off track. And I'm not particularly Christian myself.
Well, look, it's,
You know,
we had a covenant with God in the
Yeah.
Declaration of Independence,
Yeah.
and the morals and virtues and values that came with God and a higher moral authority. We have betrayed that
Our
covenant.
country was based on religion. You know, the form of
The King James
government under
Bible.
common law comes from the Bible.
That's right.
And whether, you know, I mean, let's face it, there's over 40,000 Christian sects in the world
That's
today.
right. I thought it was 20,000. I'll
You
give
know,
it 40.
I mean, I looked it up on Wikipedia the other day, so they said over
40,000?
They said 40,000.
But nonetheless, I mean, we were founded in a belief in God and a belief in Christ, and we're not a theocracy where religion runs a state, but we are church and state running parallel. But the problem that I see, this is my personal opinion, is that without a spiritual basis in our culture, we wind up with things like the shootings. I mean, if people had more spiritual identity and a relationship with our Creator, however they view Him, you know, they wouldn't be so prone to violence and outbursts and fighting and all that sort of stuff. It's not a question of kumbaya, it's a question of common sense and loving your fellow man. And, you know, that is a big part of the re-inhabited movement because it is based in a faith-based government, which, I mean, look at the Declaration of Independence, based in the Bible. You know, our rights were derived from our Creator. And so That is what we're trying to reestablish. Now, what happened to the movement as it was getting some steam going, the federal government under Obama came in and basically arrested all the leadership. Just the same way that the J6 protesters were arrested and thrown in jail without trials. This was in 2012.
Wow, really?
They picked up the man, James Turner, that educator I was telling you about.
Yeah.
And they put him in solitary confinement in a maximum prison for 4 years. And he didn't get out of jail for nearly 11 years.
Whoa!
And the only reason he got out was because he had health problems come up. Because they went to him, the FBI went to him when they picked him up, and they said, if you will turn on the Republic and turn into leadership and discredit what they're doing, we will let you walk. Otherwise, we're going to put you in jail for 160 years.
And that's it's guys like Julian Assange, all those guys. They were the bodies on the barbed wire, and they've had to do. There's been so much sacrifice to get us to this point right here, guys. I mean, seriously, this guy went to jail for 11 years, simply because he wanted to go back to where things were better,
the Republic was almost destroyed at that point. But there was a cadre, you might say, of less than 1,000 people that remained in communication and worked to put it together. And the white hats in the military in 2013 went to Trump and said, will you run for president because we think you can do something good.
But I want to kind of go back to the white hat thing because this part fascinates me too. So
sure.
why is there such a strong correlation with the white hats in the military? Is it 4-star generals that kind of like in cigar rooms at the house drinking whiskey like, hey, I'm going to fix this for you?
They don't put out a curriculum vitae of all of their accomplishments and
of course not.
But if you think about it, our government has been going around the world installing governments through the military for how many years now? And proxy wars and color revolutions and all that sort of stuff. And they're good at that. The military has the know-how.
They're very good at that.
And they have the organizational skills to come in and help a transition. Now, what Trump is doing right now, when he's getting rid of the Department of Education, people don't realize it, but the federal government under the Constitution does not have unlimited powers. I think there's like 29 specific things they're allowed to do, and everything else was left to the states.
It's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be.
Supposed to be to the states, yeah. And that's what Trump is trying to do. He can get rid of the income tax because it was, one, never properly ratified, two, it's illegal. He can get rid of the Federal Reserve because there's no constitutional basis. The Congress was given the right to coin and print money, not a private bank. We contracted away our constitutional rights in 1913.
And a lot of people still don't get that the Federal Reserve.
It's a private bank.
It's not American.
I mean, it's listed, if you look in F in the phone book, it's right there with FedEx. It's not, it's a business. It's not a government agency. Yeah, but they control us. Let's
just name this a federal chip and salt
central bank system controls the world. That's the whole point.
The bankers have controlled the world for a very long time.
The Rothschild influence
Old
is
money.
a very deep subject.
Catholic Church is very wealthy.
But,
the Jesuits.
when you talk about the currency reset that has been worked on around the world for the last 40 years.
The British government.
They're working to bring back asset-backed currency, get us a debt-based system like we have always leads to bankruptcy. Every country that has ever done it went bankrupt. We are bankrupt now.
Well, it's designed to go every 10 years.
$36 trillion in national debt and going up, at least before Trump got in, we were going up $1 trillion.
Don't worry about that, guys.
Every 3 or 4 months.
We've got about 48 trillion in Anwar. So as soon as we start to come from Anwar, we'll be all right.
We've got plenty of value, but the thing is, we're creating paper debt that's obligating us to a private entity. We pay more money to the Federal Reserve Bank in interest on the money they loan us.
Yeah,
that is our own money.
It's basically they gave a 16-year-old teenager that was born spoiled, rotten, and they gave him a blank checkbook. That's pretty much.
Our own money.
Doge is pointing out how corrupt our government has been, how financially irresponsible everybody in the government has been. But the only way we're going to, get away from that is to return the power to the people.
Right.
And just the same way that at the time of the revolution, they organized in counties, they organized in states, and went to the federal government then to get a central government going. Then at the same time, that's what we're doing today with the Re-Inhabited Republic. Right now, we are organizing Doña Ana County, Sandoval County, Bernalillo. We are the 3 leaders in the state because we're the biggest
Yeah,
population.
Santa Fe's not even there anymore.
And well, Santa Fe's been taken over by the progressives, but you know, we're trying to get the state stood up, as they call it, because you know, I mentioned earlier that the corporation runs on maritime law or the UCC codes. Those are international laws for commerce and that sort of stuff. Common law, common British law from the Magna Carta coming forward was the basis of the American legal system. Right now, look, okay, have either of you guys ever heard about the original 13th Amendment?
No.
I don't think so.
We had a 13th Amendment that was passed in 1809 and finally ratified completely in 1811, if I remember correctly, that said that anybody that, you know, either took an oath of allegiance to a foreign government, received gifts and privileges of title from a foreign government, that would renounce their citizenship and was not eligible to serve in a government office. Every bar attorney swears allegiance to the bar system in England, it's a British accreditation registry. Every attorney that says they're Esquire has taken a foreign oath of allegiance to the British legal system.
Right. So let's walk back to the White House stuff.
That everything, all of our congressional members that are lawyers are ineligible to be in.
We've already overloaded everybody with way too much. Let's go back to the White House stuff. That's
Yeah, this could take more
Let's
than
go back
one
to
show.
you know.
What do you want to know about the White
So
House?
the White House stuff, they tried in 2010. Dude was in jail for 11 years. Obama was in at that time. And how does Trump line up with that? Because I know the White House had a lot to do with asking Trump to run, and they wanted to give the military. They basically said, we're going to back you up. This is the White House and the military.
Well, remember,
But how did that all work together?
the first time Trump was inaugurated, when he was standing up there giving his inaugural speech, the military representatives came up and stood behind him, and he said, this is the first election where we're not installing a new president and a new government. We're giving the power back to the people. I'm paraphrasing what he said.
Right.
But, you know, they've been behind Trump all the way.
That's
Well,
what I'm
Trump's
saying.
first term, you know, people have to be gradually made aware when they're in deep trouble or they'll just go into shock. During the first term of the Trump administration, he was under attack all the time, and people didn't believe we were in such bad shape as we really are. And that's, in my opinion, why, even though the election was stolen for his second term in 2020, the military didn't step in. They let Biden assume office so that he could show the American people and the world what the Democrats would do if they took over the country.
I love that you said that, because I remember, and I cannot find the clip to save my life, but there was a speech that Trump gave right before the election in 2020 and said, look, I'm going to be going away for a while, but I'll be back.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal, because everyone was like, what the hell did he mean by that? Nobody knew what he meant, but now that you look back at it.
Now people are ready to accept the fact that our government has gotten terminally corrupt.
I'm so glad that happened.
We're financially insolvent. We're terminally corrupt, and you know,
morally corrupt.
Either one of two things. The military has said once the corporation is dissolved, it'll be a 10-year program minimum to segue it back into a full constitutional republic.
And an asset-backed currency.
And well, no, that'll happen fairly quickly.
Really?
I think that's going to. I do believe that's going to happen sooner rather than later, because
Kind of has to.
well, I mean, they're, without getting into world finances and stuff, they're repatriating gold. I mean, gold has been stolen from the American people. Have you noticed
Literally stolen.
how they're not talking about
Fort
the
Knox.
facts they're going to go to Fort Knox and all
They
that?
stopped talking about that
Because
quick.
they know there's
That's
nothing in there, you know, or the majority of it is gone because it's been, you know, I mean, there's not enough gold in the world.
Just like the
to
Epstein
fulfill
list.
yeah, I mean, there's so many things that are corrupt that have been done, but you know, we have to let the people know they've been screwed and make them aware of it before they'll accept a change this radical in our government.
But I get why people would screw this country over. I get why they would sell us out. I mean, it's so easy to just screw over people you have no attachment to. That's what us having a city manager that's not even from here, it's so easy for him to screw us over. He ain't from here. He doesn't empathize with us.
But I mean, really, truly, when you get right down to it, we are in a spiritual war right now.
100%.
And that, you know, goes back to what I was saying earlier about America being spiritually bankrupt. And it's not a question of going to church and putting $1 in the plate every Sunday and, doing your Sunday morning stuff and then going back to your...
No, it's not the emotions anymore. I can't get the emotions.
Religion is your relationship with your Creator. And, we have separated ourselves from God so much. I mean, in my personal life, I don't work to worship Jesus. I work to be at one with Jesus.
And all that does is it puts you at the whim of the other spirit.
Whether you call it meditation. I mean, so many people, when you listen to them pray, it's like your kids writing a letter to Santa Claus. Oh God, make Jesus, please let Donald Trump do this. Yeah, give me a reduction in my taxes or let me win the lotto. I mean, that's not religion. We have to get back to the face that, we are God's representatives in this continuum we call Earth. And it's our job to put it straight and make it work right. Otherwise, we're falling off the path. And America has fallen off the path, and part of getting our republic form of government back in is reestablishing a spiritual relationship in our nation, period.
I couldn't agree with you more. We just have a few minutes. We're going to have you back, but the website is republicfortheunitedstatesofamerica.org. Jodi, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best thing for them to do?
The best thing, my email is jodikinkaid@yahoo.com. That's JODYKINCAID@yahoo. Anybody can reach me there. And like I say, the Republic for the United States of America, that's a long thing, type it out, .org. And you can go there. There are some very brief tapes of the history of the Republic, how it was set up, what's going on. And it doesn't get into quite all the conspiracy theory that we're going into now. But I had to laugh earlier when Zeke was talking about listening to Alex Jones. I mean, how great is it that everything Alex was accused of being a conspiracy theorist about is coming to pass? And
it's worse than he said.
We need some new conspiracies because everything we were saying is true.
It's worse than he said. I mean, they came out today that the pyramids are basically free energy technology. With the types of stones that they picked, and how it picks up certain frequencies.
Yeah, well, that's another couple shows right there.
Well, it's a good show.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But he called it. I mean, and you can't deny that they've been hiding our own humanity from us, our history. They don't want us to know how powerful we are as a species. And calling to God, having our connection with God, all that stuff is super important.
The whole game of civilization from the beginning of time, back in Sumerian and Babylonian times, has been one class of people, the elites, the soulless ones, the reptilians, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
They are the conspirators that try to enslave the world. And what they've done is made us debt slaves right now to the central banking system. And our government and every government around the world is playing into that. And that's why, you were talking about the Republic spreading the idea of self-governance. We have had 69, I believe I'm correct in that number, countries around the world contact us in the re-inhabited Republic saying, how are you doing this? We want to get more power back to the people in our nation as well. And the other thing I want to touch on here, too many things to cover.
I know, it's like, go ahead.
Everybody says Trump and Musk are destroying democracy. If anybody has ever studied our history, they would know that we have never been a democracy. Our founding fathers hated democracies because democracies always devolve into the wolves and the sheep voting on who's for lunch. And we've been a constitutional republic until we became a corporation, and we need to get back to being a constitutional republic if we're going to save the soul of this nation.
And that's the word that the left loves to use. Save our democracy. They just
they want a democracy because they can control the voting machines.
It's about control.
Yeah, mob rule. That's what it is.
I want to have you back on. I know someone that we should bring on with you that's more versed than me, but I'd like to be in the middle of that. Is Joshua James, Sheriff Joshua James. He's a constitutional sheriff. He's running for governor as well. But he's the guy who educated me on this stuff a lot. He's out there in Albuquerque, but I'd love to get you guys together and we can have this because this is a lot of education that people need to hear. For the next episode or in the future, what do you know about the poles shifting?
It's going to happen.
That's right.
The Earth's magnetic field has dramatically weakened.
It's already weak.
Right?
And the poles already moving.
Down like 30% already. Right. The poles have shifted and are moving way down. The danger is that, and I don't believe it happens every time the poles flip, because the magnetic poles flip. But when it's coupled with a lot of solar activity and intense radiation coming in from outer space, it can actually cause the continental plates to shift, and we have rearrangement of the world.
It's every 13,000 years, right?
The military, when they went to northern Canada to put in, the early detection radar sites, they were doing core samples of the soil up there, and they found that every 12 to 13,000 years, the soil in northern Arctic Canada went from being Arctic to tropical to Arctic to tropical.
Every 13,000 years. And we're due for 13,000 years, aren't we?
And we're coming, what's his face? I can't think of the suspicious observer guy's name right now. But, basically, he's predicting between 2030 and 2045 is when the shift will actually
I've heard that too. I've heard that as well.
So we're coming.
That's why Elon's working so hard to get to Mars.
And again, when you go back to talk about what they're discovering under the pyramids now, the ancient civilizations of Atlantis, Lemuria, Amu, or whatever they called it in the Pacific, I mean, they existed, and they've somehow cataclysmically ended, and it appears to be that it was indeed a continental shift and a polar reversal that caused.
And then when the magnetic field goes down, we get hit by meteors and stuff too, right?
Well, I mean, look at all the aurora. The aurora borealis is being seen as far south as Mexico and Florida now.
Wow.
That's because our magnetic field, which protects us from space radiation, is so weakened because the fields are moving, and there's. That is the only thing that the people that don't want to talk about what's going on in the government can say is, well, pretty soon it's all going to come to an end anyway.
And they've been spending money on bunkers. I mean, I love this topic.
Bunkers ain't going to help.
It's not. It's 300-mile-an-hour winds. There's not going to be any magnetic protection. It's just, you got to get off the planet. And other civilizations who were here before us figured it out. I'm sure they use, because once you have free energy technology, you can go anywhere. Well, they use that free energy technology to get off this Earth, and they probably wouldn't hang out on Mars, because now they're showing pictures of obvious structures that were on Mars that are there. Obviously, there were structures there. So, I don't know, man. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just someone who looks at the facts, and I think that we're a very complicated species. I think Jesus Christ is the way. I think that's the truth. That's a language. Truth and love is a language. And Jesus came down here to teach us what that language was so we can evolve as a species. That's my own personal belief. And this is God's country. English language is God's language. And we represent a higher power here. When we talk about the Constitution, everything you're talking about, this is all on behalf of the Lord. And to perpetuate His creation throughout the solar system and throughout the universe. Because there's probably... they've done that. What is it called? The golden area. It's called the golden area. Basically, in every galaxy, there's a sun that's the size of ours, and at a certain distance that our Earth is from the sun here, there's a certain planet that's a distance from the sun over there, and there's a bunch of Earths all over the galaxy, basically.
See, we life in this universe are beings of frequency.
Right.
And
God, I love this guy.
It's just like you have a visible spectrum that your eyes can see, but we know there's infrared, ultraviolet. There's so much more that we're aware of with our eyes and our ears.
That's how they found the pyramid stuff.
And realistically speaking, it is my opinion that what we call angels and the heavenly bodies or whatever are just higher frequency beings who don't have to have a corporal body like we're sitting in here right now. Right. And demons are just guys that are so low toned that we call them demonic, but it's all the creator is a very high frequency thing. In quantum physics, it shows us very well that we are constantly shifting between energy, waveform, and particles. If you look at Buddhism, they could talk about nirvana and existence.
The observer
God and material universe are the one and the same, constantly going back and forth, but we've lost touch with the God side of the equation. And I think that's where we're really, I was thinking about this the other day, that, when in the terms of frequency of being discussion, I mean, as you're going from a wave form to a particle form, you go through stages of organization. And that's exactly what we call ethereal bodies or whatever, heavenly bodies, angels. And if it goes the other direction, like I say, they go as demons. And they feed on the energy of people suffering.
Yeah, regret, all those low frequency emotions that come with moral choices. But yeah,
don't get me started on why there's so much pedophilia in the world today.
Well, I mean, it's child sex trafficking is how they run the world. You know.
But the demons feed on that energy.
Yeah.
I mean, the fear and the terror of a brutalized child is like food. They call it loosh in the circles.
That's right. That's right, man. You know a lot. I mean, damn. I've been studying this stuff for decades, and you are right on top of things, man. We gotta have you back on. And we gotta have, this is so important, guys. As we talk about it, as we bring it out, and we educate people on it, it increases the collective's consciousness, self-awareness, and we all evolve faster. So the more we talk about it, the more we educate people on it, the better it is gonna be for the species. Anyway, thank you so much, man. You're into the most important stuff to me. This is the most important stuff. Really, it is. So we'll have you back on. Thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for coming on. Alice, is there anything else you want to say?
No, just once again.
I have one thing to say.
Oh, sure.
When will this air, by the way?
What's happened is we record this, and then it'll be uploaded to all the different formats. In fact, Zeke, and correct me if I'm wrong. So we have a Rumble channel. Okay?
Yep.
So it'll be a Rumblecast, YouTube also, Instagram, and X, right?
No, the clips go on Instagram. I haven't been putting any clips up, but for sure, I'm uploading the entire episode on Rumble, YouTube, and X. The full episode goes on those three. Hopefully this week I'll be able to get clips out. We got to have you back on, but go ahead, Alice. You're going to say
No, I was just going to say, I just want to make sure again, it's Republic for the United States of America.org, Jodi Kinkaid, and your email address again?
Jodi Kinkaid at yahoo.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting.
Well, it's been a great forum.
You blew a lot of people's minds right now.
Mind on stuff.
Mine included.
But this is the
We're
conversation.
just getting started, hon.
This is the conversation. I can't wait to keep doing these and have guys like you back on, have you back on. I mean, I can already think of a whole litany of guests that we can have on together, and we can really have fun with these types of conversations.
I have to ask one question. I'm sorry to delay, but so the JFK files are coming out, right? So do you think there is information in there about this at all?
No, because the JFK assassination was what triggered actually a movement in this direction and started it, because that was when the good guys in the military realized that the deep state was out of control.
Yeah, well, yeah, JFK saw it happening, and that's what he called. He wanted the CIA to be torn into 1,000 pieces. Yeah, right? That's what he said. That's a literal quote.
He didn't want Israel to get an atomic.
That's why I wanted to ask that.
And he was standing in the way of the deep state, and he got taken.
And they underestimated their power. And then the new deep state guys, like the guys who failed at killing Trump. I mean, these guys are 4th, 5th generation, really weak types of offspring. You know, they're not as smart as the old school deep state. You know, because they had a clear shot. You know, where they screwed it up. Satan lost. But at the end of the day, thank you for being on. I can't drag it on too much longer. But yeah, I think just keep doing what you're doing, man. I'll be praying for you. We'll be praying for you, and we'll get you back on right away. This is important stuff, and I think with someone like you, we really got to get. Maybe this will have a 4-guest podcast. We'll try to go 2 hours. We need 2 hours with someone like you because this is so much, man.
Just got to fire them up, and they're going to go.
But it's so important. It's so important.
I mean, it's a deep rabbit hole, but it's one that's vital for our survival as a species.
You know who's into this stuff big time? That's probably knows more than me and you combined. Is freaking the Pauls, Rand Paul and Ron Paul. They know this stuff like the back of their hand, man.
Well, I mean, the world is getting to the point now where they're ready to accept this information. I mean, there's more and more stuff coming out every day. And the people, like I said, if they weren't ready to hear it, it would.
It's all in the Bible.
It's gone.
But it's mostly in the Bible.
But now people are waking up that things aren't the way they thought, and they're also realizing that what did Einstein say? Insanity is doing something over and over again, and expecting a different outcome. That's where the human race is, at least in this country. We know that we've been doing things over and over. Look at California. Look at New York. What's happening up there? I mean, people are fed up with it, and they know we have to change.
Yeah, populist politicians are winning everywhere.
Information leads to change.
Educating the people is mostly what we're doing here at Chips and Salsa Show. that's what a real revolution is. A peaceful revolution is leaders like us educating everybody on what's really going on and getting them abreast on how we can fix things, because they don't know. Most people don't care like the way that we do. And so that's what I'm here doing. That's what you're doing, Alice. You know, I'm honored to be here with you guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for Chip and Salt Show New Mexico. I'll end with a brief prayer. Lord, thank you so much for bringing Mr. Jodi Kinkaid in and sharing his wonderful knowledge with the people. And I just pray that you continue to fuel us, Lord. Fuel us in this time of chaos and this time of judgment. And so that we can be as strong as a representative for you, Lord, as possible as we reinvent our beautiful country and we fight for the human race, Lord, for you and for the children. In Jesus' name I pray for everything that you bless us with, Lord. Thank you so much.
Amen.
Amen. Well done as always, Zeke. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Mr. Kinkaid. Dr. Kinkaid.
Hey,
What is it? Is it Dr. Kinkaid? I don't know what it is.
well, I'm a doctor.
Dr.
Dr.
Kinkaid.
Hey, you can do that
Cool,
song,
man.
Doctor. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
See you next week.
See you guys soon.
Bye. Well, that was interesting.
That just was, like I always tell
Oh, I wasn't recording that.
Ah.